Christopher Rosen, Gold Derby. I'm so pleased to be joined by Ben Vanstone, the showrunner and writer of A Gentleman in Moscow, the excellent new limited series. Ben, why did you feel like, just to start, why'd you feel like this was a novel that would make a great television series, and kind of how did you approach turning it into this adaptation?
Right from the off, I think the central themes of it really resonated with me. It came to me, during lockdown, actually, the project in 2020. But, so obviously the feeling of entrapment was in a lot of our minds back then. But more than that, it was this central character and how his humanity in the face of adversity carries him through and discovers, he finds a whole new life for himself inside this hotel. And it's perhaps not the life that he sort of would have wanted for himself at the outset, but it's kind of the life he really needed and deserved. And it was a sort of exciting bringing that to the screen that first really inspired me to do the project.
You mentioned like how I thought of I thought of the pandemic as well. Obviously, it's hard not to, right, with the house arrest aspect of it. But I also was just like, in terms of, it obviously set in the early and mid 20th century, but so much of it feels incredibly timely in terms of like themes of polarization and dehumanization, right? And the way like tribalness can erase people and like erase the humanity of people. And then this show kind of brings it back together. And I guess like, I don't know, I doubt those similarities to like what we see now surprised you, but how did you like kind of how did you do that, I guess, without making it feel didactic? Because I don't think the show does feel like that, but I think it makes a really strong point about like humanity and in a great way. And I think that really comes through in your writing. So I guess like, how'd you kind of approach that to have it not feel like didactic?
I mean, very much like throughout, our sort of approach was to honor the novel. And just as Amor he's got a very light touch of history through the novel, where you're on this journey with the characters and they're the center of everything, but there are these sort of historical footnotes throughout which sort of carry you through the story, and we wanted to really echo that. So you're with our characters in the hotel and you're on the journey with them, but at the same time history is happening all around them and sort of coming in and invading their lives. And I think what's so exciting about this novel is you do get to cover this sort of great swathe of history, but ultimately at its core it's about these characters and what's meaningful to them. And I think that that's something which resonates with all of us and is sort of timeless in a way that we, it's not necessarily the circumstances around us, they always change and the world outside changes, but the people who sustain us and our need for relationship and community and care for one another will always remain no matter what's going on outside. I think some really interesting parallels at the moment in terms of certainly to do with truth and how truth operates as a sort of a narrative created by the state or people within the state. And so I think it comments on that as well. And, Russia's been through historically cycles of this violence and oppression by autocrats, and it only seems to continue. It feels incredibly resonant and pertinent right now.
You do a great thing in the show, like you mentioned, like so much time passes throughout the show, and like kind of like you're removing. I think the whole story takes place over probably like 30 years, right? We're at some points we come back to the count after 5 years or whatever. One of the things I really loved about the show is you seemed like really to trust the audience to kind of catch up with what's happening with the characters, and I guess like I found that really nuanced where you're like, you don't have to explain like everything that has happened over the last like year or 5 years in the Count's life, right? You kind of just drop in, and based on the writing and the characters and the performances, it all is very, obvious of where we are, right, in the story. But I did feel like that was probably pretty tricky to get, right? Like to make sure it works. I guess like, how did you kind of approach that and make sure it landed so you didn't have to be so expositional?
Yeah, I mean, paradoxically, the more you talk about what's happened in between, the more difficult your problems become. Because the audience then is, they're being given information, but if you don't give them everything, then it can leave gaps. However, if you sort of trust the audience to piece that together themselves from what they're seeing in the present, you don't need to explain everything, because you really want them to know are the important pieces of information which you can glean from how the relationships, we find them in the relationships when we come back to them. I think there's some sort of key little sort of touchstones or landing pads that we wanted to bring in, where people, like the dates, like sort of little moments of historical context which help frame the action. But largely, yeah, we wanted to put faith in the audience and not feel that we had to spoon feed them everything. And I think that, as I said, I think it'd be more dangerous if we did, because it just raises more questions. So that was our approach throughout.
That's a really interesting way to approach it. I hadn't actually thought of that, but it's probably true, right? The more you know, the more you want to know. And if you don't know as much, or you're forced to piece it together, that's really good. That's really smart. You have like this incredible Ewan McGregor performance, obviously at the center of the show. I just interviewed him and he called it like a role of a lifetime, basically. I guess like why was why I think he's great in the part, but what was it about him that you were like, yes, he could like manage all the different aspects of the count, especially like the humor and also like the pathos later and all these different things that he's required to do in the role.
Yeah, I think it's really rare to have an actor with the complete skill set needed to play the count, with the charm, with the energy, with the playfulness, with the gravitas, with the dignity, just natural dignity, and combine that with an actor who, as professional and brilliant as Ewan and collaborative as Ewan, yeah, it's a dream, and I don't think we could have got anyone better. Genuinely, I think that he's just incredible in the role, and just a wonderful person to be around as well and collaborate with.
You also get to collaborate, obviously, with Sam Miller, the director, on this. And I know he didn't do all the episodes because you had Sarah do, I think, one or two. But I guess like the visual style I found like, again, like really interesting and like different than maybe what I would have expected for this, like in a great way. And I guess like, how did you kind of think of it? And how'd you work with him to like come up with how, the show would maybe look and how it could feel?
I mean, Sam is incredible. We've spent a lot of time together the last sort of 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, working on this project. And right from the outset, we were sort of looking to tell this story in a way that didn't feel just like a traditional period drama. I think for both of us, we felt there was a fairy tale quality to the story. There's a sort of, you're encapsulated in this world unto itself. We really wanted to, and Sam really wanted to come up with a visual style that didn't feel sort of facsimile. It didn't feel like we were trying to do a period show in a traditional sense. And that led to the decisions he made about the camera and how it would find people, and the flashbacks as well, where we wanted to create a different visual style to those as well, which we sort of lighted upon, and Sam lighted upon this idea that we'd only see it from the Count's perspective. And much as we do dreams and memories, we're not in our own dreams and memories. We tend to see other people and things around us. And early on, once he sort of found that, it was then sort of mixing that style with how he shot in the hotel. So yeah, I really hope it's got a contemporary feel. And is visually arresting as well. We're in one place for almost the entirety of the story, and it was really important that never gets dull. It never feels like we've seen the same shot twice. So yeah, there's and it's brilliantly lit as well by Adam Gillam, our DOP, and Sergio Delgado in the second block. And yeah, it's worth saying as well, Sarah O'Gorman, who came in and directed those 3 episodes, really followed in Sam's footsteps, but made it her own as well, in a way that gives those episodes their own special identity too.
Yeah, it's great. Do you mention like the hotel, obviously, as like the main set? I guess like how difficult would like you like you said, you have the book as the material and stuff, but like imagining that and like kind of transposing what you think it's supposed to look like and what it's described as looking like, and then making it your own. Like, how did you kind of like think about how the hotel would look and finding all these different nooks and crannies in it as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's when I first started on the project, there were some sketches that we had that were sort of drawn up, and I looked at the original Metropole as a reference, but neither of those sort of quite matched up what I had in my mind. And then we brought on Victor Malero, the designer, who just took the idea of the hotel and ran with it, and he created this incredible space that feels like a living, breathing entity, and labyrinthine with lots of different corridors and doors off, and Yeah, I mean, from that moment on, it's sort of he sort of created the hotel that I didn't know should be in my mind, if that makes sense. When I saw it, it was kind of like, oh my God, this is it, rather than it feeling like that I had some preconceived notion. It's that was very much, obviously we collaborated together with Sam as well, but Victor was brilliant at sort of imagining this space in a fantastic, brilliant way. We're very happy with.
Yeah, it looks so cool. It just looks so like, again, like very authentic, and like, but also like a fairy tale quality to it that I think a lot of the show has as well, which is like really neat. You meant like you talk like uh, there, it's hard, like there's a, I think that there's an old fashioned quality, I guess, to the show. I think like in certain, like I mean, like in terms of Ewan's relationship with like Billy, and also like I thought of Casablanca, and you have them watching It's a Wonderful Life and all these different like really classic touchstones of like 40s and 50s like cinema. I guess were you consciously thinking of that, I guess, while writing it to kind of fit into that, or like did you have that in mind? Obviously those are referenced, or not in Case of Wonderful Life specifically, but I mean, like, were you thinking about that and like kind of like thinking of how those movies like kind of dealt with characters and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in short answer, yeah. I mean, I think that I love the lack of cynicism, and that this show wears its heart on its sleeve, and it feels that those old sort of 40s and 50s movies allow themselves to play emotion, to play those bigger scenes. Whereas I think now we're all a little bit too cool for school sometimes, and so yeah, I was enjoyed giving our show a sense of that as well.
Do you think that's probably, I mean, like, again, I know it's not out yet, so like but my response to it was like, again, like fully emotional, like weeping at times at the show, and I rarely ever do that watching new shows, certainly. And I guess, like, do you think that is because, like, do you think like the audience is actually starved for that kind of lack of cynicism in a way that the show is kind of able to do and do successfully without feeling saccharine or like cheap? It feels like really authentic in these emotions.
I was pretty glad to hear that. I mean, for me, you've got to make people feel things, and that's the whole point for me of making a show like this. So, yeah, throughout, I mean, it's a fine balance. We sort of always got to sort of, you don't want to drift into it becoming too saccharine or too indulgent in a way. So you're sort of balancing the tones of the humour, the laughter, the sadness, the despair, and I think it's about trying to capture all of those emotions that make you feel more. So that was always our ambition with this show, and I don't think there are many shows like us, and I don't think there are many broadcasters as brave as sort of Paramount Plus, Showtime, to decide to do a limited series that is so character-based, with so much emotion at its heart, without a sort of big genre drive, or a murder or an investigation at its heart. It's just about these people. So it's such a rare opportunity to be able to do something like this. And yeah, we always wanted to go there with this show.
Yeah. I mean, the characters are amazing. Like you said, I think they're all so well drawn and stuff. I mean, obviously we talked about like the Count and Ewan's performance. Was there another character, I guess, that you were like, oh, I'm really excited to write this character, or to like figure out how to make sure they land like emotionally as well? Because like I do think everybody gets their own arc in this show. But I mean, was there someone for you specifically you were like, this needs to work, definitely, be like, otherwise maybe the whole thing doesn't hold together?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two. I think Osip and Anna Urbanova, played by Mary. How's it? Urbanova. That's how you say it, pronounce it. That role, it's sort of, by its very nature, the novel is contained and very much focused on the Count, and her character sort of exists only kind of through him. And what we wanted to make sure we did was give her a full life off screen as well, so she felt like a real character in her own right within the television show. So that relationship, to me, that runs through all 8 episodes, well, actually from episode 2 to episode 8, was a really important one. I think it provides the emotional spine of the series in many respects. And the Osip story as well, I thought is so interesting. in the novel you meet Osip, and him and the Count are already sort of sharing their ideas about movies and books. And I thought it was a great opportunity to sort of ask questions about who that guy would have been before they got to that stage. And, without giving away too much, how he plays a part in the Count's story towards the end. How did he get to that point, having obviously been somebody who would have been a arch enemy of the Count in 1921, where our story begins? So that sort of adversarial strand that runs through as well was very important to me to land.
Yeah, it's great, and I just love I agree. I think Osip is an incredible character. I loved also his take on It's a Wonderful Life and American audiences. I just thought that was really very funny, and just like good.
I mean, that's all Amor, the take. So it's not a Brit coming in and talking about you guys. It's Amor wrote that passage about Osip's response to American films, which I think is really brilliant. There's so much of the novel in the series, which hopefully we showcase Amor's fantastic writing.
Yeah, I think you do, and it's like I said, it's a great show. Ben Vanstone, we have to wrap up. Gentleman in Moscow, coming soon to Paramount Plus with Showtime. Thank you so much.
Thank you
This
very
is
much.
great.
Great to meet you.